So today we're going to take you on a tour of our mushroom farm, showing you the ins and outs of how we grow mushrooms. So the whole process starts with substrate. What substrate is it's the growing material in which the mushroom actually can grow from. You can think of this as like soil. And so what we use is something called master's mix, and that's 50% oak and 50% soil hulls. And that process starts here at our bagging system. And so up in the top here, I have loaded that pelletized form of 50% oak, 50% soy. And what we do is we load it into the bags down here. It's on a pedal system, making it really nice and convenient. And this is so much better than what we were doing before. Because when we started, we were actually at our house, and what we were doing is we took these big totes and we'd fill our whole kitchen with like 5 or 6 of these, fill up all the oak, and then bring in a hose or even just water pitcher the water in there. And we were mixing it all by hand. And me and Kaylin were just every single day making a disaster of our kitchen. I mean, it's wet everywhere. There's oak particles everywhere. And what we were having to do is then scoop it and bag it all by hand. And it was like a 3-hour process. And it was the biggest time constraint in the business. And we weren't able to do more because of how much of our day was eaten up by creating this first step. And so after about a year of doing that, we were able to get this, which is a piece of equipment I actually made myself. And we put it all together, and it has this computer that weighs it all out for us. So we get the exact right amount in every bag. That way it takes something that was a 3-hour process and turns it into about a 15-minute process every day. And I am still grateful for it about 2 years later. Okay, so after we've dispensed the oak and soy into those bags, the next step is to fill it with water. And what we do is we use this gravity barrel system here, and I actually pitch it in by hand. Now, this is a slower way to do it. The hopper system I showed you actually does have a water hookup, but I have found really inconsistent results with that. And for me, I think it's better just to use the exact measurement on the pitcher, do it by hand. It's a little bit more work, but I think it's worth it in the end result, because the amount of water in those bags ultimately is the difference between success and failure here. And this gravity barrel system, what it does is we fill it up with water, and not only does it give us a way to pitch that water into the bags, but it also allows for water supply to our steam generator down here. And this is an excellent steam generator. What it's doing essentially is generating lots of heat, heating up that water, and then that steam is then pumped into our pasteurization barrel. And so what happens here is this is where we load those substrate blocks after they're fully hydrated. And when they're in here, they end up getting steamed for about 12 hours. And they're being steamed at 204 degrees for the 12 hours. The actual cycle is a little bit longer, but we have to get it up to temperature first. And we do that using a PID system and a thermometer, making sure that the temperature stays stable in there. And the point of heating up the bags is essentially to kill any bacteria or contaminants that ultimately is going to compete with the mushroom and essentially make it where the mushroom is unsellable. So our goal is to have healthy mushrooms growing on the nutrients that we want and getting rid of all contaminants. And we do that through a heat steam process. So after the substrate bags have gone through their steaming cycle, the next step is to inoculate them. And we do that in this room over here. So I'll go ahead and show you that now. So in here, this is our inoculation room. And this is not quite a laboratory because we're not really doing lab work here at the farm. What we are doing is we're inoculating these with spawn that we're getting from Maine. When we started the farm at home, we were doing all of our own lab work, doing our own cultures and our own spawn. And as we grew and scaled, we just realized that that wasn't really the best use of our time because it was a big time constraint, and we really wanted to focus on growing and marketing and selling those mushrooms. And so that's what we do. And so what we do is we take these. This has been wheeled in from the room I just showed you. So these came out yesterday, and we're about to inoculate them. And we're inoculating them, if you want to come over here, in front of our flow hood. So our flow hood is essentially another critical piece of equipment. We did build this. What it is is it is essentially a system where air is pressurized inside of here and it moves through this filter, allowing for clean air to pass in front of my workspace where no contaminants or bacteria can fall down into the substrate as I'm inoculating it with spawn. And spawn, you can think of it as like the seed of the mushroom. It's the first stage of mycelium growing on this grain, which adds a lot of nutrients, and then it'll actually latch on to the substrate and the oak, and it'll begin to spread and colonize the bag that way. But during this process, this is actually the most important step to keep really clean, really sterile, because if any contaminants are gonna get in, this is most likely the step to do it. But because of this system and our process, we're pretty good about it. We very, very rarely get any contamination at all. And that's something we're super proud of. But after they're inoculated, then we move over here to where they're gonna get shaken, and we just, a few of us will shake them all. That's a pretty intensive job because these 10-pound bags are actually like really tough, especially when you're doing 25 at a time, is you're having to throw around all that weight, shaking it, because you need all of the spawn that we put in there to be really well mixed in to allow for the best growing possible evenly across the bag. And that even helps with the time period that they're in the next step, which is incubation, which I'll show you now upstairs. Okay, so now we are upstairs in our incubation space, and you can think of this as like storage for these mushroom blocks as they do their first stage of the growing process, which is colonizing that substrate that we inoculated. And we have a few different stages of growth up here. So like something like this was put in yesterday. It's still mostly substrate. The spawn in there is now beginning to branch that mycelium off into the bag, where something like this has been up here for a little while, and that is fully colonized. You can see all of that white mycelium that has taken over the mushroom block. And mycelium, you can think of it as like the network of the mushroom itself that's underground on the forest floor before a mushroom pops up. And that's just what we're replicating here with these bags. And a crazy thing about it is that they have so much biological energy inside of them that as they're growing, if left alone, they generate so much heat, and in a tight space like this, they would generate enough heat to begin to kill off their own mycelium, and you would lose an entire crop. That's why, in my opinion, this is actually the most critical stage to have really good environmental control. So what we're doing is we're keeping the temperature in here at 68 degrees all the time. And what that does is it ensures that as these begin to heat up, they're never gonna reach that critical point where they begin to actually die off, because right now on the outside of the bag it's 68 degrees, but towards the middle it might be actually like 74 degrees. There's a different temperature as you get further in because of the energy that the block is producing. And up here at any given moment we have about 500 grow blocks, and so what that means is that we have a lot of different life cycles of mushrooms to track, because something like a shiitake mushroom could actually be up here for about 3 months, whereas a blue oyster is in and out of here in only 10 days. And so what we have to ensure is that we're labeling and tracking everything accurately to make sure we're getting everything at exactly the right moment when there is the most energy that is trying to produce a mushroom, so they're put downstairs in the optimal condition. So one of the more exciting things happening up in the incubation space is this is actually where we fruit reishi. So the reishi mushroom is actually capable of fruiting inside the bag. It needs significantly less oxygen than other mushrooms do, and there's enough that is created with the filters on the bag, and it creates its own little microclimate inside of here that allows them to grow. And so we just grow them like this. You can see here some reishi growing, and these are very slow growers. This took about 3 months to get to this stage here, and so what we can do is just kind of cut them as we need them. So we just store them here, and then if we need some for market or we need some for tincture, we take them as we need them and just cut them and use them that way. And the lighting that we put here is because all the color that's in the reishi is actually because of light. So mushrooms don't photosynthesize like plants do, but they change their growing habits, their direction, and even their color based on the light that's available to them. And so we find we get really beautiful reishi with this light spectrum that we use here. So up here in this room, we actually do a number of different things. We dry, package, and process mushrooms. Here we have a bin of lion's mane that's going to be packaged, and some of it will be turned into lion's mane powder that can be used for all sorts of different things. And something else we do up here is tincture. So this is one stage of that tincturing process. Tincture is actually something we weren't initially doing at our farm. As we were growing so many different medicinal mushrooms, a number of family members and then customers at the farmer's market and even people online were reaching out saying that they wanted our tincture. And so what we did is we began to really get in the science of it, understanding what we were doing and creating better and better tinctures until it's become a real staple of what we're doing here at the farm. And I'm just glad that that's something that we can offer as well. It's just a really great mushroom tincture supplement, and it's great. It's just real mushrooms, and so that's a really cool thing. Okay, so now you are in our fruiting space where we have 3 different grow tents. And before I open them up and show you the mushrooms inside, I actually wanted to tell you a story about how we ended up here. So 5 years ago, I had a different company. It was a woodworking company, and I was doing it out of my garage, and I had dreams of having a commercial space and scaling that business. And so I was just kind of dreaming, looking online, and 5 years ago, I saw this warehouse, and it was the one I wanted. And at the time, it just felt like this impossible dream. I knew I couldn't afford it. I knew I couldn't, but I was really fixated on wanting that warehouse. Ultimately, I had to let it go because I couldn't afford it. And ultimately, I ended up ending that business to start this business. And so years later, we're growing in our house, and we don't have these 3 grow tents. I have a 4 foot by 8 foot grow tent, which is less than half the size of this one. So really small. And that was what we were currently doing farmers markets out of. And it had just taken over our house. And we knew we needed to produce more mushrooms to meet the demand of what people were asking for. And it just wasn't happening at home. And so it was scary because we also weren't making enough money to move into a commercial space quite yet, but we really had a trajectory and knew it would be possible if we could get in that space. So we began to look at commercial spaces, and believe it or not, as we were looking, the same warehouse I had looked at 5 years prior popped up as available. And we were really nervous. We went and checked it out, and we ended up signing for it the same day we looked at it. We then drained our bank account, brought all of our money down to almost zero. Me and Kaylin both have pits in the bottom of our stomach. We're terrified it's not going to work. And we move in here with just our little 4 foot by 8 foot grow tent. And for about the first month we were here, we weren't able to get new equipment. So we brought our little residential fridges from home here where we were storing the mushrooms, and we were growing out of that small tent. And this warehouse felt huge. It felt like we would never grow to be able to fill the whole thing. And the funny thing is it's only been about 1.5 years and it feels small already. This warehouse feels small, and we're already like, okay, like we're really grateful for what we have, but where can we expand to now? Because we still can grow more. There's still more demand. And it's just been an amazing journey looking back on that, knowing that it was a dream I had 5 years ago, but I had to wait and create an entirely different business to be able to bring that dream to conclusion. Just a really cool thing to look back on. But so here in this space, what we do is, this is predominantly where all the mushrooms are fruited. We actually grow a mushroom. So I'll go ahead and open up a tent so you can see what's inside. Now, in here, the way that the mushrooms are growing is they like high humidity. So we use these humidifiers that we home built. They work fantastic for bringing the humidity up to about 95%. And then we make sure there's tons of fresh air moving in and out of here because the mushrooms themselves love fresh air. So mushrooms, as a fun fact, are different than plants. Where plants like breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, mushrooms are the exact opposite. They're like us. They breathe in oxygen and out carbon dioxide. So because of that, without good fresh air exchange, this tent becomes too heavy with CO2, and then you'll get really strange growth. The key to beautiful, fresh, healthy growth like this is good fresh air exchange and humidification. And really what we do is we cut the bags, and what they're gonna do is they're gonna grow out like they would out of the side of a tree out in nature. So like here you can see the snow oyster growing. Here's a baby one right here that just started. And what we do is we slice that bag, and then all of a sudden that mycelium, which is like the brain of the mushroom, that network that's under the forest floor usually, begins to use its receptors and go, oh my goodness, there's oxygen and moisture here. This is where we're gonna grow. And that's the process. And so thing about these grow tents is it's super critical that they get cleaned. These are on a rigorous cleaning schedule because of the amount of humidity moving through here. We have to keep this sterile all the time so that we don't have any contaminants build that we don't want, and we just continue to grow the mushrooms that we're growing. And so we actually have a deep clean twice a week. And the unfortunate part about mushroom farming is the reality is the majority of your work is spent cleaning. You're really just a glorified janitor, but you get to be working with these amazing forms of life while you do it. And so each tent, we actually grow different kinds of mushrooms. So in here we do predominantly black pearl, lion's mane, and king trumpets. In the tent behind you, we do chestnuts, and in the tent to the side, we do predominantly oyster mushrooms. And this just allows us to have slightly different microclimates in each tent, allowing us to have the perfect growing environments for the different varieties we do. Okay, so now I want to show you our favorite investment that we've done here at the farm, and that's our refrigerators. So when we started, we were, cheap because we had no money. And so we started with these tiny little 7 cubic foot residential fridges, and we just put them all over our house. So we had like a few in our grow room, which was our spare bedroom, and then we had some in our laundry room, and they were okay, and they were the best we could do at the time. And so when we moved in here, that was what we had, and it quickly became a realization that this isn't gonna work. We need about 10 times the amount of fridge space that these are offering us. And the first thing I wanted to do was build a walk-in refrigerator. That's pretty common with most mushroom farms. That's what they do. I looked into buying some, and I just realized it wasn't going to be the best option for this space because we would lose our grow space. And ultimately, we do enough farmers markets and deliveries and grocery stores now that we move stuff in and out of here pretty quickly. And so what I wanted was a quality commercial refrigerator that would work for the space we had. And I ended up going with these 3-door reach-ins, and then just last month we added an extra one here. And what these have allowed us to do is essentially have much better storage for those mushrooms after harvest. I didn't realize how much those residential fridges didn't adequately regulate the humidity coming off the mushrooms as they release moisture. And so what it was doing is it was killing our refrigeration life. And the mushrooms we were taking to market at the time, really, they had to be at the market immediately after harvesting, like within 2 days, because within 5 days, we had soggy, bad mushrooms. And now this is still always the goal. We try and bring stuff to market within 2 days, but an amazing thing we've noticed is that we, on even our oyster mushrooms, moving to this style, we're getting more than a week shelf life in these fridges. I've even noticed about a week and a half on blue oysters, some things like king trumpet, even 3 weeks or so. Now, I don't sell the king trumpet when they get to 3 weeks, but we end up making delicious meals with them for ourselves. But it has been an absolute game changer to have a commercial fridge like this. And they're just a reach in, but the amount that they hold is really quite shocking. And what we do is we do these bins, like here's a bin of blue oyster that was harvested yesterday. And this is getting packaged and sent to a restaurant today. And I'm really a big fan of this system. It allows us to get so much more mushrooms than we could before. And it's really exactly what we needed. And as we need bigger or more, we'll just have to figure that out as the time comes. But for right now, these really function fantastic for us. All right, thank you so much for stopping by the farm today to see how we grow mushrooms. And if you actually want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe as well as leave a comment of the kind of mushroom videos you'd like to see. And just thank you so much for joining us in this journey of growing mushrooms together.